You're listening to Atlanta Baseball Talk, your weekly podcast for all things Atlanta Braves.
Welcome to the show. Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2015, and my name is Steve. I am joined by both Hamilton and Kurt. Guys, let's get to it. In tonight's show, we'll check in on the latest cuts and performances from spring training. But first, we're very happy to be joined by the great David O'Brien, the Braves beat writer for the AJC, and a must-follow on Twitter at DO'BrienAJC. David, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, man. Thanks for joining us.
All right,
man. So let's start with the off-season. Were there any of the players traded away that you questioned the move?
Well, I mean, once the momentum started and it was obvious which direction they were going, then, it was kind of tough to question any of them. I wasn't at all surprised by Hayward and Upton. I knew they'd be traded because with 1 year left on the deal, I knew the Braves weren't going to pay what it would cost to sign either one of them, what they thought it would cost to sign Hayward, what they knew it would cost to sign Upton. So, with them aiming towards, the future rather than the next couple of years, it didn't make a lot of sense to pay the kind of money those guys are going to get. So the Gattis one surprised me a little bit, only because Hart had talked about how, he was in a different situation because he had 4 years of contractual control. It's going to be pretty cheap for the next couple of years, and they were going to try to play him in left field. But, in retrospect, he didn't think that Gattis would stay healthy, and he's probably right, playing, 600 at-bats in left field and, a little bit of first base and an emergency catcher situation. So far, Evan hasn't even stayed healthy this spring with the Astros. So with that wrist again, which really bothered him a few years ago in the minor leagues. So we'll see. I mean, that one could come back if he hits 40 homers this year, gets 500 at bats. Then you'll wish they hadn't got rid of him, but. With the way they configured the roster and the price that they paid for Gomes, it ended up being, I think, it'll end up being a good situation. I know Gomes brings so much to the team, whether he produces. I know he's on the downside of his career, and I'm not expecting a whole lot from him on the field. But in that clubhouse, if you had seen the difference, just talking to guys off the record, what the difference he's made, he's already worth what they're paying him. They're not paying him a whole lot of money, and he's been a huge influence already in that clubhouse, just in changing the mood.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. So a fair bit of write-ups about the better atmosphere around the clubhouse, the club this spring. Looking back last year, I don't remember seeing stories about like bad clubhouse guys, just a lot of lack of leadership. So what's the big change?
Well, it's tough to say. At the time when this is happening, you're not going to write, this is a bad clubhouse, because you couldn't point to a certain guy. There weren't bad guys, and I try to explain that to people, is that you don't have to have bad guys to have a bad clubhouse. It wasn't a good mix, and we said that all along, whether we wrote it, whatever. I mean, I thought it came through a little bit in stories that were written, the lack of leadership, all that kind of thing. I mean, you're not going to come out and say, while the team's playing its season, this clubhouse stinks. They have no personalities, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, Jason Hayward's a great guy. There's no doubt. He's a good guy. There's nothing wrong with Jason Hayward in the clubhouse. Justin Upton, he's fine. But Justin Upton is a player who comes in, gets a paycheck, plays a game, might hit you a home run, very good streaky hitter, very good hitter, period, good power hitter. Doesn't bring anything as far as leadership to a clubhouse. And that's not an indictment of him. That's just not the type of guy he is. So when you're putting together a team, you got to be conscious of that. Frank Wren was not conscious of that when he put together that team last year. And when he, one by one, kind of systematically traded or let guys go that were the personalities. I don't know if he was aware of how good a clubhouse he had 3 years ago, but it was a great one as far as you had guys like David Ross, Hinske. Prado was a huge guy like that. To a lesser degree, Brian McCann. But, I mean, you had a bunch of them. And then when Chipper retired, that was the start of it kind of, one by one, they were all gone. So you were left with last year not a single guy like that. And that over a course of 162 games, much more in baseball than in football or basketball. You have to have guys that keep the energy level up, especially when a team's going to go through some bad times, when it's not a great team to begin with. you got to have some guys that keep the energy level up and that keep the intensity up, and they had none of that. They had no vocal guys like that. They added a couple of them this year for sure, with Gomes, with Grilly. People weren't aware of Grilly, but he keeps things loose and energized in the bullpen and in the clubhouse before, in the mornings during spring training. You hear him all the time. He's a loud guy. You didn't have any of that last year. Guys that just keep the energy level up. I was talking to Kelly Johnson about this the other day, and he was like, people don't understand that, how important it is, but there are guys, and he played with Gomes before. He remembers him back, I think he said in Fall League, way back, but he was always like that. But he said right now they'll be back in the dining room eating at 7:30 in the morning, before the workout, and just talking to him, it keeps the energy level up, energized. It's just he brings that to the clubhouse, and Grilly brings that. Brzezinski brings that to a degree. They've got a few guys like that now, and it doesn't take many. And people feed off that, and then people loosen up, and there kind of brings out that in their personalities as well. So it's crucial. It's really important. And I don't know how many games they're going to win this year, but the type of team that they've built and the players they've added, the energy guys that they've added, I can guarantee you it's going to be a more fun team, a more enjoyable team to watch over the course of 162 games than last year's was. I will go out on a limb and guarantee you that it is.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean, they, especially the second
half,
were
dreadful to watch
unwatchable.
last year.
Yeah, unwatchable.
Dreadful.
Has minus Frank Wren adding John Hart, has that lightened the mood around? I mean, Frank Wren took a beating after he left.
Yeah, and I don't want to kick him when he's down and pile on and all that. I think at this point it's too easy to do that. But yes, to answer your question about John Hart, there is a noticeable difference in the mood among Freddie Gonzalez, for one. The guy is so much more at ease right now than it seemed like he had an attitude last year of, you know what, I'm going to do my job, and if I get fired, then hey, I'll get another job somewhere else. But this year he seems like he's enjoying every step of the way. The coaching staff as well, they just seem like they're more at ease. But the front office, the way it's kind of trickled down when you're talking to guys at the batting cage, and Bobby Cox, he's around the team now. Bobby Cox in the last couple of years, you might see him a little bit at spring training in a golf cart once in a while, but he's right up at the batting cage now. He's talking to guys. He's coming through the clubhouse. The guy, he's much more a part of it now. And the players, they love seeing him. It's not like he's in there making decisions and telling Freddie what to do or anything. It's not like that at all. He's just around the team now a lot more because he wants to be. He really likes John Hart, and John Hart delegates duties, lets guys do their jobs, and isn't trying to micromanage the whole thing and kind of have an influence over everything.
Okay, we'll pause for a second and let people read between the lines and everything you just said. Okay, so David, let's move on to the free agent signings. Did you question any of those? And yes, I want you to say that the Markakis signing is too long.
No, I don't think that at all. I think $11 million a year for a player like him in this market, when you compare him to what guys are making of a similar pedigree, and then after talking to guys that played for him, another guy, you have everybody says, oh, that's the worst free agent signing. I don't see that at all, why it's the worst free agent signing. Now, if he can't play, if he couldn't play because of the neck, I would agree it's a bad signing, because I'm not convinced that they knew he was going to have the surgery even though they said they were pretty certain he was going to have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but in retrospect, he's playing now, and it doesn't seem to be affecting him at all. Now, when he starts diving and everything, because he plays in a high intensity level of defense, running into walls, diving, that's what makes him a good defensive player. Will he be able to do all that with the neck? I don't know. Will they want him to? We'll see. But as far as what I've seen, just a few games I've seen him play so far and taking batting practice, I haven't seen any noticeable effect from the neck. And I think by the second month of the season, he's probably going to be back to pretty close to himself. When with strength and all that. Just he's made huge strides in the 4 weeks since they got him. But well, again, he's another guy. What he brings to the clubhouse. Now, he's not a real loud guy at all. He's an intense dude, a quiet intensity about him. But again, talking to Kelly about him, Kelly played with him last year in Baltimore briefly, and he said, and I used this quote in a story I wrote the other day. He said, the guy's a freaking professional. The guy does everything. The guy in the outfield, he throws to the right base. He hits the cutoff man. He never makes a mistake as far as the mental stuff, and that's important too, playing the game the right way. He moves the guy over. He gets the guy in. He does all those little things. They didn't have players like that before, not many of them. and he's the guy that people see him working out, how hard he works. Kelly said that he works. He's one of the rare guys anymore that plays every day. He's played 155 to 162 games every year of his career, basically.
Yeah.
So, and yet he works out. He told me he works out like Kelly said. He works out after every game, lifts weights in there. So, when young guys see that, that's another thing. They take their cues off of that and they say, "Oh, that's the way it's done." You know, this guy's had a 10-year career. That's the way it's done. I'm going to do that. So, you know, there's a lot of thought went into the clubhouse, assembling the clubhouse, and how these guys were going to fit together when they signed these guys or when they traded for them. And I think he's a big example of that. Dave Tremblay had him in Baltimore, and they took Dave Tremblay up there to recruit him and help try to sign him when they went after him. And Dave Tremblay just raves about him and thinks he can have a huge influence on the team. So we'll see. I think it's way too early to judge that one in any aspect of it, either performance or the long-term effect it'll have on the others.
Yeah. All right, David. So BJ's name change was followed so quickly by the foot injury we barely saw him in the spring. How was his mood and attitude when he arrived at camp? Because I got to figure the last 2 years have been miserable for him.
Well, and hey, just to finish, you did ask me, were there any other questioning signings?
Yeah.
I forgot a couple of the early ones I questioned, and they would not have. I don't think they would have signed. I know they wouldn't have signed those guys if they'd known who they were going to be able to get later. But I think they kind of were covering their butts and making sure they had some depth when they signed guys. Like when they signed Callaspo right off the bat, they wanted to make sure they were covered with a utility guy, with a guy who could play second base. They didn't want to be in a position where they were overpaying for somebody in February. When they went out and signed some of those relievers like Veal back in November, they wouldn't have done those. But in the big picture, those are, dropping the bucket as far as the money spent on those guys. But, Callaspo right now is kind of clogging up a spot. They're paying him $3 million. I don't think they would have got him at all. So,
Yeah. Well, and of course, Jace Peterson, they had no idea it was going to turn out
exactly.
like this.
If they knew they were going to get Jace Peterson, they would have had no reason at all to get Callaspo. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, and getting back to Melvin, and I've been surprised at how quickly I've been able to say Melvin instead of BJ, but it seems like it's coming naturally. But
So
I don't know. We didn't see him enough. I think anybody it would be lying if they said they saw him enough to make any kind of evaluations or judgment on him. I mean, he got hurt in the first workout.
Yeah.
It was the first official workout. We didn't see enough of him to know what kind of mood he was in. He didn't come real early. He made an adjustment with his feet more than anything with the toe and the way it was pointed inward before, that really funky, it pointed backwards, that's gone. He's still doing some stuff with the hands and everything, but Kevin Seitzer doesn't think that's a big problem at all. The position of his hands and all that. He thought that the position of his feet and some stuff that he was doing with the toe tap and everything was a waste of time or a waste of energy and was throwing his timing off. So he kind of simplified that. But again, he got hurt during the first day of live BP, so I can't tell you anything about how he's going to hit. I have no idea if it's going to take effect. I think it really hurts him that he couldn't work out this whole spring, because I think working with Seitzer would have been huge for him, and it would have allowed the Braves to really see what they've got and where he's going to be. But right now, they have no idea where he's going to be.
Yeah. So
it's going to push back the whole clock about how long do you give him, how much rope does he have. It pushes all that back now. You can't come in and judge him on if he gets here in May, for instance, and he's hitting 100 after the first 3 weeks. So what does that mean? I mean, he just missed. He will have missed, 2 months basically. So it's going to push it back a little bit, the time that it would take to bench him or whatever, if you want to look at it from a glass half empty perspective.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to some pitching. So Banuelos was sent down today. Folty remains. So I guess 2 questions here. Do you think Folty's really in the running for the 5th spot, and who do you think gets the 5th spot?
I don't think Folty's in the running for it. I mean, the only reason Stoltz wouldn't get it would be if they were trading him.
Right.
But if they don't trade him, there's no reason he won't get it. He's clearly been the best pitcher out of the bunch that's left. Wang's been pretty good too, but Wang has a later opt-out date. It's not till July, from my understanding, and Stoltz is just in the days right before opening day. So if he doesn't make this roster, especially the way he's pitched, somebody will want him. And if I'm him, I'm opting out and signing with somebody, because there's other teams that need starting pitchers. So Stoltz, I think, gets it. Foltynewicz is not ready. He's got a live arm. He's going to be a real good pitcher, I think, in the long term. But anybody that's seen him pitch this spring would not come to the conclusion that, hey, put this guy in there, he's ready to go. He's not. I mean, he's got knocked around. He had some walks. He had one really good outing, but the rest of them have been mediocre to bad. So, and Ben Wells is not ready. He didn't pitch enough innings last year.
Yeah.
We never thought he was going to be ready. It didn't make any sense. He pitched 75 innings last year. Why in the world would he be ready to be a fifth starter this year, you know? I don't know why the Yankees were so careful with him last year. You know, he's coming off Tommy John, but that's not the normal protocol for a guy in the first year after Tommy John to have him go like 3 innings to start. So, it's been a really slow recovery for him from Tommy John, but I don't think the Braves could just throw him in there and go from 75 to 175 innings. So he needs to go to AAA and, you know, ramp it up this year to a more normal year after Tommy John and see where he's at. But he's another guy with a real live arm and showed something in the one good outing he had. You can see the talent that is there with Ben Wells. It's just it's still a health thing. I mean, can he last? Can he hold it together?
So if Stoltz does get traded, any chance that Cody Martin gets that spot over Wang?
Yeah, if he gets traded, but I don't know that they would trade him right now. I don't. But Cody Martin has looked good. And the good thing is he's not out of options, so they can send him, you know, to AAA and keep and he can keep doing his thing down there and somebody's going to get hurt. We've seen this. When's the last time the Braves only had 5 starters in a season?
Well, sure.
More like they'll have 7 or 8 at some point. So, but Cody Martin has really been good this spring. I don't think they would hesitate at all to go with him as a 5th starter out of the blocks if they didn't have Stoltz on this team or if they didn't have, you know, Wang. But again, Wang is a non-roster guy and he's not out, and they don't have to worry about an opt-out with him before opening day. So, but yeah, I've been impressed with Cody Martin. He's kind of come out of nowhere. You know, you look at his minor league numbers, and there was, you know, he's been solid, but nothing to make you think he was going to come into spring training and not give up a run.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, it's hard to trust that Minor's going to come back, right? He rested all offseason.
Yeah, you just don't know when.
Yeah,
you don't know when. I mean, he said he felt good in his first light throwing, but what does that mean? It means nothing. I mean, he's got to. You know, we saw it a whole year last year, and then we find out, you know, at the end of the year, he tells us it's been bothering him off and on all year, although he never really said that during the season. But it makes you wonder if there's a structural thing, not a ligament or anything like that, but as far as the muscles and the balance, and that he needs to get a better balance, and how long that'll take to get, you know, lose some of that tightness that he's had that's causing the problems, and maybe get more of an ideal pitcher's upper body that's not tight and it's in a better proportion. We'll see. But if he comes back, I don't know how many starts does he make before it's bothering him again. We'll see, but they just can't count on anything right now with him. When he comes back, if he's back to what he was 2 years ago, then that's obviously huge and it makes the rotation a lot better. But fortunately for them, they went out and got enough depth that I think they'll be okay. If you look at Stoltz's numbers the last 2 years, he's been fine for a number 5 type guy.
So based on what you've seen this spring from Grilli and Johnson, I'm not going to ask if you think they'll return to their heyday, but do you have expectations that they can be above average relievers?
I think Grilli can for sure. And I think Johnson, it's not a guy that relies on striking out a ton of guys. He uses that sinker, and it gives you a lot better chance of coming back when you need to get a sinker back than it does when you need to get 3 or 4 miles an hour back, you know, and he's a sinker baller, and Roger's great with those guys. And so far, I mean, he's had some really good outings where he got a lot of ground balls and some double plays, and that's a good sign. I don't know if he's going to. It's not going to be the guy he was when he got back-to-back 50-save seasons, obviously. But I think he'll be a good setup guy. But I think Grilli is going to be really good. Grilli's looked really good to me.
Yeah, good. All right, so staying with the bullpen, David, Vizcaino and Russell have looked bad. Avilan's looked good. Who else do you think rounds out the bullpen?
Well, Avilan's looked okay, not great, but he's looked better than he did last year for sure.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't have it on in front of me right now. But you got the 3, Kimbrel, and the two setup
Grilli
guys.
And Johnson, yeah.
You got the lefty. You got Altman. He's out of options. He hasn't looked good this spring, but he's out of options. And you signed him. You're not going to. Obviously, he's going to be in there. That's 4. So you could have a 5th guy. Cody Martin could fit in as a 5th guy if he's not in rotation. He'd be a good fit, or not 5th guy, long guy.
Man. Yeah, the David
long
Hale
man,
role.
And it could be a spot starter. Yeah, David Hale role. I think Cody Martin would be good in that role. Russell would be if he was pitching well, but he's not. He's looked bad for the most part. He had, but after he gave up that home run in Houston, that game was such a blowout that nobody really paid attention. But after that, he pitched 3 solid innings. He went 4 in that day. So, he could be that long guy. Vizcaíno, they want to give him every chance, to be in there, but man, he's walked some guys and looked erratic. That arm is electric still. He's got a really good arm, but I don't know. He's not out of options, fortunately, so they don't have to keep him if they don't want to. Juan Jaime is out of options, so they either got to keep him or somebody's going to probably pick him up just because he throws so hard. But man, every time he comes in, you have no idea. It's an adventure. It's a roller coaster ride. So a lot of guys. None of them ideal. They all have their flaws right now, or they're not pitching particularly well right now. So I would guess Louis Avalon's in there, though. I would think.
Yeah. All right, so let's move to the other sort of open spots. I was surprised that Yuri Perez got sent down today. I was pretty confident that he'd be the backup center fielder, but he got sent down. So
well, he hasn't done much this spring. I mean, I thought, coming in, looking at his numbers in the minor leagues, you thought, yeah, this guy looks like he'd be a really good guy to have in that role, but he's really hasn't shown anything this spring. He hasn't done much. He had a couple of good games, but for the most part, he's not shown much, not nearly as much as some of the other guys.
Yeah, so Zoilo Almonte, the guy from the Yankees, he's out of options, I'm almost positive.
He hasn't looked good this spring either, but he's out of options.
Right. So, and then Kelly and Turdo and Cunningham. I mean, who do you think gets those final bench spots?
Turdo's played well this spring. He's looked good. I mean, the guy can hit. He's not much of a defensive player. He's going to be you're going to cross your fingers in left field when the ball's hit to him, but he can hit, man. Period. Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's in there and he could platoon with Gomes a little bit, a soft platoon, as Freddie says. Kelly Johnson's looked good. I mean, Kelly, especially in the last couple of weeks, he's looked really good. He's not on the roster, obviously, so there's that. You got to think about how many guys can you add to the roster. But he definitely gives you something, that left-handed bat and the versatility. So, Cunningham's been okay this spring. He's not shown a whole lot, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to show you a whole lot when you look at him for a period of 1 or 2 or 3 weeks. He's I think Freddie has said it before. He's the kind of guy you need to see day in, day out over the course of a year, and you realize, hey, this guy's solid, but he's not going to light it up if you're just focusing on him for one game. Because he's not a real speed guy, he's not a real power guy, none of that. He's just a solid player. So I don't know. It's so many moving parts, and and so many the piece in say left field platoon is so much dependent on how what you do with your backup. Are you assuming Goslin is the backup, which he probably is? Then who's your other backup infielder? So there's so many ways it could go, so that I haven't really sat down and said, okay, this is how it's going to go, because I don't need to for another week.
Right. I got you.
But I think any of those pieces could all work. I think Kelly and Turdo are both real good options.
All right, David, let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions. So the team scores more runs this year than it did last year.
More runs. Yes, I'd say they do.
Okay. Which starting pitcher ends the year with the best ERA?
Best ERA. Alex Wood.
Oh, I like it. God, wouldn't it be great if Wood just continues to do what he did last year?
He's a stud, man. That kid's a stud. He's got it. He's got it mentally. It's important. He's a winner. He wants it bad, and he's got talent, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's the kind of guy you want to build around.
And what a huge boon to the rotation would be if he really is for real.
Oh, he's for real. There's no doubt. He's a stud, I'm telling you.
Okay, all right, I love it. So barring injury, Jace Peterson keeps Peraza in the minors and is still the starting second baseman by the end of the year.
I think there's a real good chance of it. Better than 50-50, and I would have never said that when spring training started, but Jace Peterson's a good player. And he's going to be on his team one way or the other, whether he's a second baseman all year or a utility guy. But right now, he's too good to look at as not playing him every day. You need to see what you got. So, and I've seen nothing this spring to lead me to believe that he's going to start and be hitting 220 and they have to bring up Peraza. So, if he gets out of the gate and he's hitting well and playing a solid second base, there's no reason for him to rush Peraza. Peraza didn't look, close to ready this spring, but we didn't see him enough to really. Again, to make any judgments, but he could certainly use some time in the upper minors. That could benefit him. Even if it's a whole season, he's young.
Yeah.
So right now, I would say there's a better than 50-50 shot for us as the second baseman all year.
Can Peterson play any other infield positions?
Yes, he can play. He came up as a shortstop.
Okay.
He's more comfortable at shortstop than anything, but obviously doesn't need to do that. But he can back up Andrelton, so they got a guy that can legitimately back up Andrelton now. And you can play Goslin in second or whatever, Caspo, whoever's on the team. So, but and he can play third. He's played third last year. He played second and third when he came up with the Padres.
So Rio Ruiz doesn't have to be the heir apparent at third.
He doesn't have to be, but I think he will be. I think he's going to be a good player, but no, he doesn't have to be. You could move Peraza to second and Chase Peterson to third. You could do that if that's the way you like it. But I think a whole lot that remains to be seen. We'll see what Rio Ruiz does if he continues hitting at every level like he has so far. We'll see what he does this year. He's not a big power guy, but he's developing that power. He's getting bigger and bigger and stronger, so he's an interesting guy to watch.
All right, Melvin is the everyday center fielder at the end of the season.
Oh, man, I don't want to be seen as negative Nanny, or Nelly or whatever, but negative Ned, let's say that. But God, I'd have to say no.
Yeah.
But, I'm not saying it with great conviction, and I don't want to say he can't get it back, but, man, it's been a bad 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip side, it's kind of hard to believe that EY Jr. is the answer all year in center field.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to be great.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason EY Jr. signed a minor league contract, that he didn't get a major league deal. He's not a great player.
Yeah.
He plays hard, he's got speed, he gives you a dynamic, but he's an adventure when that ball's hit to him out there. For a guy that has that much speed, you don't know what he's going to do when he gets to it. So, and he doesn't take great routes. But at the plate, you need a guy batting leadoff with a better than 300 on base percentage.
Yeah.
So we'll see what he does. But he's looked good this spring, especially early on. But you have some other options there. We talked about him earlier. Cunningham could get a shot if he hits. But Yuri Perez, if he goes down and has a solid first half of the season in the minor leagues, then he's a guy that could definitely, I could see plugging in there. He's really good defensively, and he's got a ton of speed, and he's hitting the minors for sure. So Yuri Perez could be there.
All right, over-under on Andrelton Simmons' batting average, 248.
Over.
So do you like what you see at the plate? I mean, I know his numbers are good. He's hitting some homers. His balance is better. I've not caught an at-bat of his.
I do. And I think Kevin Seitzer is really going to help him a lot. Last year, they talked a lot about, Greg Walker talked a lot about, he said he told Andrelton again and again and again, you need to stop swinging so hard every swing, be under control, and figure out what kind of hitter you want to be. Well, that's fine, but I think Seitzer's more of a guy that can actually get him to do that and works hard with him in the batting cage on getting and on all the guys, on their approach. He can have a huge impact on a lot of guys. I think Seitzer was the perfect guy for this job with this team right now. I really am sold on Seitzer. He's impressed me this spring. And I think Andrelton is the guy that could really benefit from him, and it wouldn't surprise me if he hits 265.
Wow. Well, Andrelton and this next guy I'm going to ask about, if they could turn it around, it would really change the whole offense. So Chris Johnson, batting average 275 over under.
I'd say it's about right at where it'll be.
So what so clearly you think that he's going to
If I had to go one or the other, I'd say under, but I think it'd be right around there. But we'll see.
I mean, Chris Johnson was pretty ugly last year too. You like what you're seeing?
He was. I do. I was kind of surprised. I haven't talked to him about it in the last couple of days, but I was kind of surprised to see him. He moved the hands kind of slowly back up to where they were. But if you look, he starts up where they used to be. Because he had brought the hands down to kind of shoulder level.
Yeah.
And with the idea being he'd be able to get the ball quicker, be able to wait longer, let it get deeper on him, and he did that, and he stuck with it for the first month of camp. But now you look at him, and he's starting with his hands up around the top of his head again. But I noticed today, watching him on the TV replays, that the hands come down soon. It's like it doesn't really matter where they start because he's in the hitting position when the pitch is before the pitch is delivered. He's got the hands back down lower than where they used to. He used to keep them up high and then have to come a long way to get down in the zone and to get the ball through in the plane that he wants to be in. So now, even though he's starting them up high, I think that's more he feels comfortable up there, but he's bringing them down faster. So I think, he's worked hard with Seitzer, and he wouldn't get much results early, but he felt better. I mean, he looked better, and he said he was starting to feel, good at the plate. But so it kind of surprised me to see them move the hands back up there. But like I said, then I noticed that they're coming down lower than they used to be. They're not staying up there high through the whole, waiting to go straight from there into the zone.
Yeah. Okay, good. So over-under on Braves wins this year, David, 74.
Over.
Do you have a number in your head?
I think they'll be closer to 500 than 74. So closer to 81 than 74.
It really would be.
I'd say a good over-under would be 78. And I think it's not going to surprise me if they win. If they are a 500 team, it really isn't. And it's not going to surprise me if they win 75. I think they could go. That's just not many. Six games is not much. But I think that's the type of team they are. And like I said, they're going to be a lot more. They're going to be a lot more sound team watching. So even if they don't win more games, even if they lose a couple more games than they lost last year, they're going to look a lot better doing it. They're not going to leave a boatload of players on the in scoring position every game. They're going to take better advantage of those situations. So they're not just going to look. You're not going to come away bashing your head against a wall, going, "Jesus, if they just drove in this guy, they won." That's not the type of team they're going to be. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. It really would be something with all the offense that walked out the door, all the WAR that walked out the door.
Yeah.
If they equaled or surpassed the number of wins they had last year, it would be something else.
I'm not going to be surprised, man, just watching them play and knowing the kind of attitude that they have and how they feel about themselves. It's not going to surprise me if they win more. I know it'll surprise most people. I know people aren't expecting much at all from them, and you have some people talking 100 losses. I can assure you that's not going to happen.
Well, David, I think that's a great place to end it. So, folks, everyone, please read David throughout the season at the AJC and on Twitter. David, always a pleasure, man. Enjoy the regular season, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
So, guys, let's check in on some of what we heard from DOB in that interview. And I want to start with how much of a negative impact it sounds like day to day there was from Frank Wren and his reign of terror. I was very surprised that even, the beat writer saw that day to day.
Yeah, and I guess you just take for granted that the GM doesn't have that kind of day-to-day influence on sort of the clubhouse. I mean, maybe that's naively taking that for granted, but the fact that Bobby wasn't going around there, and maybe Bobby's back more because he's sort of been appointed one of the big three. So he feels an obligation to be at the batting cage more often. But
I think it's he and Wren. I think it was known that he and Wren did not get along. Bobby,
which is interesting, yeah. And which I'm sort of surprised and a little disappointed that he would let that get in the way of what was best for the Braves, right? That Bobby would distance himself from the Braves just because he didn't want to be around Freddie or Frank. Yeah. We know he doesn't want to be around Freddie. So that was. I don't know. It's exciting. I mean, that's another reason to have optimism this year is that Hart has got a really good vibe there and Bobby's around more and, maybe there's just more positive energy. That's a reason to be excited.
And speaking of positive energy, DOB was all about the clubhouse energy and Seitzer. And I didn't walk away thinking he believes they're going to vie for the wild card. But he really believes they're building something here and a much better sort of fertile ground in which to do it.
I agree. Yeah.
Kurt, what struck you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you obviously that it's a different structure, but any job. I mean, we talked about this last year that you have a bad manager. I mean, and not like Freddie, who is a bad manager, but I'm talking about a overseer who was Frank Wren and how that can impact everybody. I mean, you get tight when your boss is around and all those kind of things. And if you feel like that person is a negative influence, it has a negative influence on the way people approach their day-to-day work. I thought it was interesting because you asked him about the clubhouse, and obviously he had written some stuff about the clubhouse not being so great, and so it made me kind of think, well, who is he talking about? I mean, obviously we know who they got rid of. So was Jason Hayward a bad clubhouse person? But it was interesting that he kind of made the point that it doesn't mean that there were bad people. It's just that there was just bad
no vibe.
chemistry.
Yeah,
right.
no
Yeah.
vibe, you know?
Right.
I mean, Hayward, we know, is really soft-spoken. Justin, more so. He didn't mention BJ, but BJ seems even more so.
And Evan Gaddis,
is super humble and kind of, quiet like that. So there were I guess it gets back to the leadership thing, but there was just no vibe and no energy. And when things started to go south, there was no one there to pick it up.
Well, and hopefully we can look back on this and say the best thing that could have happened to the Braves was that in 2014 they tanked the second half of the season and got Frank Wren fired.
Yeah, and look at what it has begat. The farm system is now this, and these guys are here and coming up through the system, all that. Yeah, I mean, it'd really be amazing if this ends up being that big turning point.
And it's unfortunate, too, that 96 wins allowed that to continue. I mean, clearly these issues were there, but it became superseded by success on the field. And to me, if it's that poisonous, regardless of what the success rate is, you have to make a move and get rid of the guy. So, I guess again, it'll be hopefully our luck that they did have such a bad season last year, and it ended up with him being terminated.
Yeah. All right, so guys, just some quick notes from spring training this week. So the final race is getting a little clearer with Banuelos and Yuri Perez getting sent down. Why don't we start with the final roster spot? I believe, or I should say, I can't believe Fulte gets it. Maybe they trade Stoltz, and if so, Cody Martin goes in there. But I bet it's Stoltz. The only reason I can't quite 100% believe it is Wandy and Stoltz are sort of the same guy. Lefty, veteran. Do you want that sort of similarity 4 and 5? Do you guys see it going any different?
No. I bet it's Stoltz.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess the bigger question is, how much are you going to be able to extract from these guys? I mean, do you work magic again and get Aaron Harang, or is it Ben Sheets?
Right. God, remember Sheets' first start, though?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Amazing.
It wasn't even just one, wasn't it? I mean, didn't he go
he had
like
like 5. No, I thought he went 5-0 or 4-0 with one other decision.
And
he
then
started off super hot, and then it fell apart.
The
wheels just completely fell. I mean, we're not going to get. We're sort of half pregnant here, contending for this year, but really playing for the long haul. I don't think we get enough for Stoltz to actually trade him unless there's a huge injury. I mean, we're sort of making up our mind. This is, we're going to find the lineup that is going to take us into opening day. It's not that there's a huge hole, and it's not like somebody's going to come offering something big for him unless something catastrophic happens to them. So I would be surprised if we traded Stoltz.
If they could get anything good enough to
make it worth it.
Some of that depth, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the other big
and like
news,
DOB said, sorry, Stevie, is that you're not making it through a season with 5 starters, right? I mean, you need and if you're gonna, it's good to have a veteran maybe coming up to take some of those spot starts, just for their experience.
And I had totally forgotten that we had traded David Hale, by the way.
Yes,
you're not a real fan
for like a backup catcher, by the way. So I guess the other big piece of news was that today, Sunday, the Braves released James Russell, who, if you remember, we got at the trade deadline last year. He was our big move from the Cubs, who couldn't get lefties out last year and couldn't get anybody out this spring. And they're eating like $600K of his contract. And all the beat writers today were like, with Russell going down, it looks like lefty Brady Fiegel, who they had sent down like a couple weeks ago and then brought back up recently, may make the bullpen. And I'd be lying if I told you I even remember reading Brady Fiegel's name at any point this spring. But, we may need to get used to it because he may start this season.
Wow.
And Kelly Johnson continues to kill it, and it seems like he's going to get one of the bench spots. I mean, he's hitting home runs, getting his average up. I mean, I just bet that Kelly makes it.
And it was good. It was interesting to hear, maybe not interesting, the DOB talk about a lot of his references to what's going on with the team were through conversations with Kelly Johnson, right? So, I mean, I think he also provides a little bit of the intangibles off the field as well as all the stuff that he's doing on the field. I'm happy with him taking a bench spot, especially the way he's been playing this spring.
Yeah, and he can play infield and outfield, and it's important for us.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'd say, Chris Johnson actually has started to hit this week and, continued through today. So, we've said it before on the show, if Chris Johnson and Simmons actually hit this year, maybe they can score some runs.
Well, it is fascinating looking at the numbers. And again, these are spring training numbers and not saddling everything to batting average. Some reason we still need to caveat this every single time we talk about it. But how many guys that are going to contribute to the 2015 Braves are having really good or decently productive spring trainings versus last year? You look at the numbers last year, and there's like 2 guys that started for us and that really contributed at all that batted and had a decent spring. The rest of them were way down, their numbers were kind of already showing signs that, like Simmons and Ugla, God bless him, guys that we were going to be counting on that were, that weren't having crazy springs like some of these guys are this year. So hopefully that's a sign.
Hopefully it translates. All right, guys, that is the show. So please remember, everyone, we are back to our regular schedule of every Sunday night throughout the season. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as iTunes and Stitcher so that you don't miss any of our shows. And as always, check us out at atlantabaseballtalk.com for past shows, to check out our blogs, and to post in our comments section. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at ATL Baseball Talk and to like us on Facebook. Thanks again for listening, everyone, and go Braves!
Thanks for listening to Atlanta Baseball Talk, your weekly podcast for all things Atlanta Braves. To find new shows, to post in our forum, or to send a comment, please visit us at atlantabaseballtalk.com.
Had to admit